our next guest, I love his pipes. I love his voice, and he's got the call. He's got it down.
The Lord has gifted him with the voice, and let there be voice.
Okay, you can hear him on the Eagles pregame show. He does Westwood One, NFL Films. Let's go to the Barb's Harley-Davidson Sports Hotline and welcome into the locker room, Scott Graham. Good morning, Scott. Hello, Scott.
Morning, guys. How you doing?
Good morning. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great.
Scott, we brought you up. We said your Eagles pregame show, Westwood One, NFL Films. I have always enjoyed listening to your voice on over the radio or airwaves. You got the pipes.
Hey, nice to say, and it's just one of those things. It's what I love to do, and so the enthusiasm comes out too when I'm doing it because you guys are doing the exact same thing. Anybody who sits behind a microphone generally loves what they're doing.
Yeah, they say if you love what you do, you never work a hard day in your life.
That's true.
But in radio and doing what you do, there's so much preparation involved with what you do. Tell people, when you call the Eagles games, talk us through the amount of preparation that you go through.
Well, the biggest thing with the preseason games is the size of the roster, because if you're doing a regular NFL game during the season, you kind of know everybody who's on the roster. When you get into a preseason game, you're talking 90 aside, and you're trying to, because I'm working for the Eagles and it's an Eagles broadcast, I'm trying to learn as much as I can about everybody who's on the roster. But then you just flip it around, and it was the Steelers the other night. It's the Patriots. I basically know the Steelers and the Patriots from watching them during the season, but the extra 45 guys I generally have no idea about. So you try to, you try to learn what you can. You pick up a nugget here or there. You learn a little bit more about them. And our broadcasts are more focused on the Eagles side of things anyway. But that's not how I was taught to do it. So the preseason games take a lot of time, a lot of prep. And I tell this to classes that I teach. You put together all the prep, and you probably use about 25 to 30% of it if it's a good game. You use 60% of it if it's not a good game. So it's basically that's how it's laid out. You have the things that are there to get you through the broadcast, regardless of which way. But you got to learn about it. And you got to make yourself familiar with it.
Here in the locker room over the last year, I've had the honor of talking with a couple greats that have retired. Mike Emmerich and Dick Stockton have been on the program, and they said exactly what you said just right there. You have to really prepare. 30% you use, the rest you don't, unless it's a slow game. But, all the greats, you included, all say the same thing.
You learn it over time. And in the beginning, when you're young, you try to figure out what's the best way to do this. And you kind of reinvent the wheel a whole bunch of times before you figure out what works best for you. And, that was the beauty part of it, because I got a chance to work around a lot of great broadcasters. I got to pick up a little bit of what Harry Callis did. I got to pick up a little bit of what Andy Musser did. I got to pick up a little bit of what Kevin Harlan does. I get to see those people do their work, and it's like, I can use a little bit of that method, and then you kind of cobble it together, and it becomes your method.
Scott Graham's with us on the Barb's Harley-Davidson hotline here on the locker room with Pete Thompson and Billy Schweim. Scott, you're a pal of mine. I've seen you out and about. We play golf in the Hero Campaign tournament together at times. And when I look through your resume, I was trying to tell Billy in the break, make sure you mention this. Make sure you mention this. Make sure you mention this. There's NFL Films, Westwood One, FS1, CBS Sportsnet, Eagles Preseason. There's a lot of lines on that resume, buddy.
Well, and there kind of have to be when you put 3 kids through college. That's pretty much how that works. So, when I realized that we had 3 kids that were going to be going to college, and we had, it was all right. So, let's see, I'm not doing anything these weeks. I wonder if I can get a job doing something else. But you know what? That's a facetious way of putting it. I like doing all those things. I like the varied nature of what I do. I like the fact that there's a football season, there's a college basketball season, there's times when I can put on my production hat and produce the Villanova show for Jay Wright. And I mean, I like the way it changes it up. I think, there are some people that are built for the ability to do the same thing all the time and master it and be in exactly that spot. I don't know if it's my attention span or what, but I like having varied things thrown at me at different times of the year. It keeps it fresh, and it keeps me learning something in each of those disciplines in whatever it is.
You mentioned the Villanova show, and boy, Villanova basketball is certainly blown up in the last 8 to 10 years, right, on the national scale. We had John Runyon on in the first hour of the program, Scott, and Billy was asking him about his kid and the pride that he had with his son being able to play in the NFL now that John Runyon had played in the NFL. Am I mistaken, or did I remember seeing a picture of you and your son at the same, what was it, the championship game or the Final Four, and you were both media working?
Yeah, you're mixing two stories together, but yeah, my oldest son went to Villanova, and he was a senior in 2016, and he and his lunatic friends drove to Houston because they won tickets in the lottery, and he said, I'm never going to get tickets, and he and his friends had driven to Louisville for the Elite Eight, and then he calls me and he says, I'm never going to get tickets for the Final Four, so I'm not worried about it. He calls me on the Monday and says, we won the drawing. We're driving to Houston. Do you mind if I sleep in your room? No, it's fine. It's fine. So, I had him. I had a couple of his friends using my shower. But, yeah, I mean, he got to be there in that and I was so lucky to be able to work for Turner for the team cast, right. And I got a chance to call Chris Jenkins' game winner. But my son was there in his senior year for both of those things. And his younger brother, who went to Michigan, had no interest in working in broadcasting, but he did it kind of as a fun side thing. And it just so happened that I got a Michigan game, and he was on the rotation, and we were sitting at the table next to one another at the Michigan game broadcasting. And the guys I was working with from Westwood said, I'm not sure how good your call was because you seemed to be looking over at Brett more than you were looking at the court. And you know what? That could very well have been true because, I don't know how much prouder you can get at that point.
We're talking with Scott Graham. Of course, you can hear
awesome.
Scott. He does the Eagles broadcast, preseason broadcast. You can hear him on Westwood One, NFL Films. Scott, what do you enjoy doing the most? Because my first recollection of you is with the Phillies. I really enjoyed your call at the Phillies game. I was kind of sad that you didn't stick around with them on a more regular basis. But what do you enjoy doing the most, football or baseball?
It's funny because when I started doing baseball, I didn't know how to do baseball. I was not one of the guys who goes about it the normal way, which is you get a minor league job, you work, you hone your craft. I had been a pre and post game guy, and I got an opportunity to be in the booth. And my first baseball game I ever called was a major league game. Wow. So I had been used to doing years of up and down the court basketball and the pace of football. And baseball, the pace took me some time. It really did. And as time went on, I thought that I got better at it. I don't think it was a finished product when it ended. And I think I still had a fair amount of room to grow. But I loved the game of baseball. I don't know that I love the game of baseball as it currently is structured as much as it was when I was a kid. It's not the same game. It's not the same approach anymore. I used to love the small ball aspect of it. I'm an anti-DH guy. I'm super old school with regard to that stuff. I love football, and I've always told everybody who's asked me the question, even back when I was doing all three, I wouldn't want to give up any of them.
Right.
I really wouldn't because each of them has something that's different. There's something about a football game when it comes down to the closing minutes and it's a regular season game, you're playing for the playoffs, that drama level. But, if you ask me to list the things that are most excited about or proudest of or will remember most one day when I retire, it's got to be Jenkins' shot.
Yeah.
So it's a hard question for me to answer.
No, Scott. How about when you do NFL Films and do you ever listen to yourself and like what's your reaction? Some people can't listen to. Obviously, you want to critique yourself to make yourself better, like football players when they watch film. But when you hear your when you hear yourself do NFL films, a highlight, how do you feel about that?
Well, when I auditioned for the job back in 2003, they called me, and Steve Sable had asked to get me among the people who auditioned for Game of the Week because they were bringing it back. And I went and I did the audition, and I said, can you send me a copy of it, regardless of whether I get the job or not? And they still hadn't made a decision, and I got a VHS tape in the mail, and I popped it in, and I started laughing because it sounded like I had gone to NFL Films fantasy camp, and I'm seeing all the pictures and the music and everything else that I'd known my entire life, and then there was me, and it just sounded ridiculous to me. And then over time, Steve taught me a lot. Steve taught me a lot about, my voice was never going to be Facenda's voice. My voice was never going to be Harry's voice. My voice was, what it was. And he taught me about phrasing. He taught me about pacing. And he made me so much better. The way we started, the first time that he ever worked with me, I went home and listened to that finished product on Game of the Week, and I walked out of the room 3 minutes in because I thought it was awful. And it was part of the process. It was part of the process of getting me to where he wanted to get me to. And he did. And, it's the job that I still get a tingle when I walk into the building. It's a job that I still am in awe of whenever I get a chance to do work for them. And those guys and women are so talented and so dedicated to what they do. They're the best there is. And just to even be associated in a small way it's an honor.
Scott Graham's with us. I'm so glad you brought that up because you had retweeted out the Paul Domowitch story about Steve Sable, and your tweet said, a beautiful story which brought a happy tear to my eye. Grateful to have known and worked with Steve. I owe my entire voice work career to him. I'll be wearing my SDS lapel pin with pride in Canton next week, and of course, well-deserved that he's in there, overdue, if you will, and don't park in his parking spot, right, Scott?
Right, exactly. And there's remnants, and unfortunately, I hadn't been in that building now. It's almost a year and a half. Mm-hmm. After I did the Super Bowl highlight film and a couple of other things last March, the building shut down, and everybody who was doing voice work, Liev Schreiber and a number of the other celebrity actor types, they do their stuff remotely, but there are some of us that do it in the building. And I was doing my stuff remotely all last year and all this summer. We're hoping to get back in this year, but Steve's presence is still all over that building. And the thing, Pete, that really rung out to me was when somebody asked me after Steve had passed, is it going to change NFL films? And I said, no, it's not. And the reason is because Steve ingrained in everybody what it was to be the type of storyteller that they needed to be. So it was like this sounds like a weird way to say it, but it's like his spirit and his love of telling a football story still lived in everybody else who worked in whatever capacity in that building because he was so enthusiastic about it. So all of those producers, all of those editors, all of those audio people, if you ask them now, it's like, oh, wait a second, I shouldn't do that. Steve would hate that.
That's right.
And Steve's been gone for a long time, but he's not gone because his legacy still breathes through the work that they do. It blows me away. It always did. And there was not a better coach in terms of pumping you up when he needed to pump you up. And there was not a better teacher of what it was that he believed was the right way to do it and have that appear in everybody else's work.
Oh, no doubt. Scott Graham with us and some thoughts on Steve Sable. I'll tell you this, Scott. We did have John Runyon on. He said he was going to go to NFL Films later in the day. So, I know his size and your size. Just draft right in on him, Scott. Nobody, it'll be fine. Nobody, just follow his block.
I'm fortunate. We're doing a sit down. I think it's going to end up being part of a TV special with John and Trey later on this month for when that date rolls around, and we're going to be. It's going to be fun to sit down with them. We used to do the Eagles Unscripted show, and for one summer we took it on the road, and we went down to Washington, D.C., and we did the interview from John's office in Congress, and
Cool.
it was really interesting to watch him in that setting, not in the football setting, and his views on what that job was and everything else. But I mean, great stories, and that's that's what this whole thing is about. Like, literally the entire thing. It's what I start when I teach my class. It's the first day is you're a broadcaster, fine. You're a storyteller.
Yeah.
The whole point of this is to tell a story that people want to listen to, whether it's a game, whether it's a documentary, whether it's a sports report, whether it's a talk show. You're telling a story, and you want to make it so that somebody who's sitting and listening to it or watching it is compelled to keep listening and watching.
Well, Scott Graham, listen, man, I really appreciate you taking time out. Thank you so much. We're honored to have you on. I look forward to the rest of the preseason, hearing your call, and on Westwood One with NFL Films as well. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much. Anytime, guys.
Take care, Scott. Good talking to you, bud.
There he
Be well,
is,
Pete.
Scott Graham on the Barb's Harley-Davidson Sports Hotline.